Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 161 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I am your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I am a speaker and author of the book From Letters to Leaders, Creating Impact on Your College Campus and Beyond. Fun fact, while I was executive director of my fraternity back in 2012, I was hiring speakers to come and speak to our fraternity brothers about various topics at our annual conferences. One of those speakers was a guy by the name of Josh Arendi. Many of our listeners know Josh from Fired Up. He did such a great job that day that it really got me thinking about how I could help not only my own organization, but really fraternities and sororities all over the country. So cheers to Josh for inspiring a whole new generation of speakers here at Greek University. And as our listeners know, we call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. And to our listeners, I want you to think about today, do you value self-help? Do you value an intentional work ethic? What about perseverance? Have you experienced your own adversity that has pushed you to share that experience with other people? Do you believe that everyone has the potential to live out their dreams, no matter what that is, and do it fearlessly? Our next guest absolutely does. Today we have with us Ashley Monroe. She is a fierce woman, speaker, blogger, teacher, coach, and wife to her amazing husband, Travis. Ashley loves coffee, just like me, and she works out here and there. She's a high school English teacher, and she's lived in Saudi Arabia, Spokane, Washington, and currently Charlotte, North Carolina. Ashley is probably most well known for Fierce Women's community, both on Instagram and also on Facebook. She's most proud of her online courses, her ongoing Fierce Women podcast, Coffee and Conversation, and also her blogs as well. She's most passionate about speaking with ambitious women about how to overcome adversity in their life with a message of survival, fierce mindsets, and victory. Welcome to the show, Ashley.
Thank you so much for that introduction.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I travel, so if you want me to do a little introduction for you on the road, I can make that happen.
I'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
I'm sure I'm going to be seeing you on stages all across the country, so you never know. We might have that opportunity sometime soon. So you spent some time at UNC Charlotte, but you also spent some time at Central Washington University for your undergraduate experience. So I was wondering, what was special about those two institutions for you?
Yeah, that's right. So I spent my first 3 years at UNC Charlotte, and it was kind of a blessing because my dad is in the military, and so I was able to use the GI Bill, and I kind of just opened up the map, was like, where can I use this? And I kind of just chose Charlotte, and I'm so glad that I did. One of the best things that I loved about UNC Charlotte was the multicultural experience that I was lacking in Washington State. And also within the majors, you kind of move with the people like a cohort. And so you build that community. And that's something that I really, really valued. But because of financial purposes and all of that fun stuff, it took me back to Central Washington University, where I graduated with a major in English and secondary education. Mm-hmm. And there I was able to do my practicum and my student teaching. So I really, really enjoyed that experience as well.
That sounds great. You're absolutely right with UNC Charlotte. It's definitely a multicultural experience on campus. And I know the students, they get a lot of value from that. So I've seen that over and over again. So I'm happy that you had the chance to experience that. And Charlotte is definitely a great city.
Yeah, it brought me back.
Yeah, that's a fun city. That is really good. And I'm glad that you mentioned the GI Bill, because I feel like we don't talk enough about the GI Bill and the opportunities that presents for families where you have military parents. That's a great opportunity. That's a great ticket for you to take advantage of. And I don't think we talk about that enough.
Yeah, and I have 2 older sisters, so it was kind of split up between the 3 of us, but I am so grateful that I had that opportunity to use it.
Yeah, that's really great. I hope more people will investigate that and
Yeah.
make sure that they use that. And among different things, you're also a senior high school English teacher. So talk to us a little bit about how do you help your students enter society after graduation with some kind of a plan?
That's such an important question, and one that I take really seriously because I'm the last educator or the last English teacher that they see before graduation, before they enter the workforce, or if they're college ready. And I kind of put my stamp of approval whether or not I think that they're ready. And it's really, really important for me. One of the things that I do, I created my own little unit called Adulting 101, and I have them envision the life that they want, no matter how big, how scary it is. And we kind of backwards design that plan together and collaborate with how they can reach those things. And sometimes it's like, I want to have a mansion, I want to drive a Ferrari. It's like, well, what kind of career do you have to have in order to afford those things? Because at that age, they're not really thinking of the steps that they're going to have to take to get there. But along with that little course that I do, I definitely take interest in the public speaking standard that I teach, along with, reading literature, reading informational text, and knowing how to write. They have to know how to speak, communicate, listen, be able to articulate their arguments. And that is something that I really, really work on. And I don't think that a lot of people know that senior English is all about being able to present, what you believe, taking your stance on things. You're about to become a citizen in society. And so I really, really stress the importance of being able to make your arguments, stake your claims, and to be able to prove it based on research and all of the analysis that goes with it. So that's something I'm really passionate about, is getting them ready to, collaborate with others in teamwork and just really prepare them for the struggle, but also the fun things in life after high school.
Mhm. I mean, thank God for teachers like you. I mean, man, oh man, do we owe you a debt? I mean, oh my goodness, your work is so important. And, thank God for teachers like you. I mean, sometimes I went through a master's degree program and, I actually got a chance to work with a lot of the students in the cohort there. And some of them, just, basic writing skills and basic speaking skills just were not there, even on a master's level. So they went through not only senior English, high school, but also through college, and they just didn't get the writing skills and the speaking skills that one would expect, even on a master's level program that we were in at that time. And so, I mean, your work is just so important. And I wish that more teachers had the same outlook that you obviously do, which is that you feel that is, your role and your responsibility to get them ready for the next step.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
that's just amazing. So kudos to you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's amazing. You're also a women empowerment speaker and you're a public speaking coach at Fierce Women LLC. So talk to us more about this business, Fierce Women, and how did it come about?
Yes, I would love to. It's like my pride and joy, right? Fierce Women started in the summer of 2018. I was in my third year of teaching. I was actually teaching middle school at the time. And I had a group of girls that inspired me to advocate for them. And I too was once a girl who was very shy and timid and introverted. And I had to learn how to come out of my shell. And that was the first intention, was to how can I equip women, young women, with the skills necessary to be confident in the workplace, in a room maybe full of men, in an environment where they have to speak up for themselves. And so that's what really inspired it. And it's kind of cultivated into this, blog and podcast. And now I'm coaching women public speaking skills, because communication is seen throughout so much of life, right? You have to interview to get a job. You have to communicate. Like, communication is going to solve so many problems. And so that's why I find it so important. And my passion is to really help people and young people speak their truths and speak what they believe with confidence.
I love that. And I think, one of the myths about speakers is that all of them are extroverts. And that's not true at all. I mean, as you know, of your own experience, and I know from my experience, I mean, if I go on a plane and I'm speaking on a college campus, many times I'm putting on the headphones and I'm trying to find ways to not talk to the person who's sitting next to me because I am naturally really just an introvert.
Me
But
too.
something happens when I get on that stage and there's 4,000 college students out there in the audience. I just turn on and I light up. And so I've really, started to embrace that, and I love that feeling. I don't have that feeling of being on stage with 4,000 people in the audience. You don't get that feeling every day. I wish that I did, but there's a lot of work that goes into being a public speaker, and there's a lot of work to getting to that point where you're on that stage. So I think it's a great service that you're providing, because I do think that even introverts can learn this skill of public speaking that is just so critical.
It really is. Yeah. And I think that, as an introvert myself, like pushing myself out of that comfort zone, it's key to growth and being able to do what I do. It's just so important.
I love that. I think I totally 100% agree. Your featured keynote is called Fierce Over Fear. So why is it that we often don't really dream big enough, and that our goals are really most often too small? I see this all the time when I'm working with college fraternities and sororities. I talk to them about their goals, and I want them to share with me what their goals are for their organization, or even for themselves. And sometimes those goals are tiny. And I'm like, I need you to think bigger. I need you to dream for a minute. And sometimes they just don't. Why does that happen?
That's such a good question. And I love that you brought up the keynote Fierce Over Fear, because this is so ideal for your audience right now, for the college students, because that's where the inspiration came from. Was in college, I had the fear of failure so many times in my life that it would stop me from pursuing my goals. And then once I learned how to achieve my goals, I had the fear of success. And so both of those things were stopping me from pursuing my goals. And so I had to pretty much, step back and analyze what exactly I needed to do in order to face my fears. And I think that I do this with my clients too, is teaching them how to dream. I don't think that some people are taught how to dream big. They have a small goal. And I do teach that SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, reasonable, and timely goals. But when you start achieving those small incremental goals, you kind of sit back and you're like, wait a minute, I'm reaching all of my goals. Maybe I need to dream bigger. But I think that what stops us is our self-doubt and our limiting beliefs about ourselves. And we kind of just we find a safety spot and we stay there. But in order to grow, in order to be fierce, in order to overcome those obstacles in our lives, we have to dream bigger, because I find that we end up achieving those goals that we put in our sights. And that's something that I always have to do too, is like, I dreamt of moments just like this, and now I have to dream even bigger. And I think it's something that we all have to do. We all have to kind of reflect and make our dreams limitless.
100%. Sometimes it's just about changing vocabulary. So instead of talking about goals, I will literally talk to the college students about their dreams. And
Right.
I think just by changing that word, suddenly it changes their perspective. So that's kind of, one of the things, that the tools that I have in my bag in order
Right.
to get them to start expanding their ideas, right?
Yeah, because it doesn't cost anything to dream.
Right.
You can dream as much as you want.
And we all have dreams, but sometimes we don't articulate those dreams. We don't share those dreams with other people around us, even in organizations, when we're supposed to be working together to accomplish things that by ourselves we wouldn't ordinarily be able to do. So, getting them to open up about their dreams, I think, is a really helpful tool. And I hope that our listeners will do that within their chapters and talk about their dreams, because that is ultimately how you're going to motivate the other members of your organization. And so let's talk about motivation. I think this is a really important piece here. Just yesterday, I was talking to a fraternity member at Marietta College in Ohio, and I'm not going to out his fraternity or anything like that, but he was talking to me about motivation, that he's got a motivation problem, especially over the summer. A lot of the guys in the chapter are really just kind of on break, and they're not really very motivated to do much work. And you have a self-motivation course, which I thought was really interesting. So how do you stay motivated to keep going when times get tough?
That's a really good question, because I think that everybody in 2020 had lulls of motivation, whether it was career-wise, fitness-wise, just doing stuff around the house, whatever that looked like for you, there was downtimes in motivation. And something that I talk about in my course is the fact that the analyzing and reflection of your intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And so whenever I feel unmotivated, and I can tell the self-awareness is very high about when I'm motivated and not, is really reflecting on the bigger why. Why am I doing this? Is it worth the struggle? Is it worth the effort? And I analyze my own choices in life. Is it intrinsic motivation? Am I doing this for myself, for a bigger purpose, the bigger picture? Or is it something extrinsic motivating me, like a pay raise or the job title or, that grade or the pay, whatever that looks like that's extrinsic? Is that worth it? Is it worth the struggle? And so once I decide that, that's the most empowering thing, is the choice to keep going towards that goal or to not. And I think that you can choose to stop going towards something, but you have to own that decision as well. And so I really think that if you choose to stop going towards your goal, you have to live with that. And so that motivation there for me is, I can't live with that. I have to keep going. It forces me to keep the perspective.
Yeah, that's a really interesting activity that you're talking about in terms of extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. I think for our listeners, think about, especially if you're in a leadership position, think about the people in your organization and whether they are intrinsically motivated or extrinsically motivated, because that will help you as a leader if you know that about your team. And so somebody who's intrinsically motivated, they're motivated just they wake up in the morning and they have their own desire to go out and be successful, right? I'm the CEO of a company. I don't have a boss, right? I just wake up every day and say, I need to meet more people. I need to spread my message. I need to help fraternity and sorority members around the country. That comes from inside me. Nobody's telling me that I need to do that. I do it because I love what I do and I'm just intrinsically motivated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Extrinsically motivated people, these are people that, maybe they're motivated by material goods, right? Maybe they want to drive a nice car or have a huge house or things like that. And so you really need to know your people in order to understand how to motivate them and how to get them to do the things that we need to do collectively as a group. Now, in terms of public speaking, now obviously as a public speaker, it's something that I love doing. It's something that I chase. It's, just an incredible feeling that I just can't get anywhere else other than the stage. But as a college student, I'm going to tell you right now, I was petrified of getting up on a stage. And I know even for my kids, I have one child who really kind of enjoys public speaking and, he loves doing it any opportunity he gets in high school. And then I have a daughter who's like, there's no way you would get me on a stage. So I guess, could you explain to our listeners, why is public speaking important for recent college graduates that are now looking for work?
Oh yeah, and I can relate to that feeling of terrified stage fright when I was younger. And it's funny that I chose teaching, because I have to talk and public speak every day. It's a little bit easier talking to youth, I think, than when I have like parent night and the adults are in the room. It's different, I will say that. But public speaking, communication skills, they translate across the board. So being able to write, read, listen, and speak all correlate with public speaking. And I believe it's 60 to 70% of employers, that's the top skill that they're seeking. And I think that that's mostly on almost all job applications is communication skills. And interviewers will actually test you on your public speaking during the interview. The communication skills comes from the tough questions and how you're able to process the question, how you're able to answer the question with confidence. Your body language has a lot to do with it. So you may say, yes, I'm good at communication, I'm good at working on teams, but they're honestly looking at how you're presenting yourself during that interview. And so you have to practice, you have to talk to people who are strangers to you so that you get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's such an important skill to have in the workplace, no matter if you're an entrepreneur or if you're in corporate. It's a very, very important skill.
Yeah, if you look at all of the leaders of industries, I mean, pick your industry, whether it be IT, you start looking at companies like Apple, right? And others. I mean, the list goes on, and we would be here forever naming every CEO of every company that is doing big things. But the common concept that you will see over and over again is that the leaders, the founders of these companies, the people who are in leading roles today, the reason why their company is doing so well is because they're a visionary and they're able to articulate their vision to large numbers of people to get them to follow them. I mean, everybody's going out and buying a new iPhone and they're lining up at $1,000 a clip plus for this new iPhone. Why? Because they have somebody who has a vision and everybody is following them. But in order to do that, you have to be able to speak in public and articulate these concepts and get people to join you. Right. And so I think, no matter who you're talking about, I think you see that common thread is that public speaking ability.
Yeah. And even just to add, even on social media, if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to bring followers in, you're going to have to start posting video content and get comfortable talking about yourself, your brand, whatever that looks like for you. And it's something that people are all going to have to get used to.
Yeah, and it takes practice. I mean, even with this podcast that, now we're 160 episodes in. If you go back and you look at me on camera, episode 1, it's not going to be as comfortable as it is episode 161. So, it gets better over time, but the key is practice. You got to be doing it over and over and over again. So don't think that, for some reason you can't do this. Yes, you can, but it takes practice. That's the key. It's just the amount of hours that you spend refining your craft and practicing that up on stage. Now, what tips do you have for college students that want to improve their public speaking skills? Is there anything that they can do right away to make some improvements?
There are a lot of tips, and I thought about how I could answer this question because there's so many, but honestly, talk. Start talking now. If you are in college courses right now and your professor poses a question and you have an idea, it's time to start verbalizing your answers. It's time to volunteer and speak. It's just really important that you start hearing your own voice and knowing what you sound like. The next tip I would have is to prepare. If you have a presentation coming up, an interview, a big project that you're about to present, prepare. I can't say that enough because I think that a lot of people will say, oh, I'll just wing it. A lot of extroverts will say that, like, I'll just wing it. I got this. I'll just write the bullet points down. But in all honesty, to look polished, to look classy and know what you're saying, you really need to practice and prepare. And then the last tip that I have is to analyze other public speakers. And I don't think that a lot of people do this, but this could be as easy as when you're watching your favorite movie or your the news at night, thinking about, well, how are they articulating their words? What kind of vocabulary are they using? How can I implement that, rhetorical strategy into my own speech? And taking those things and modeling after the speakers that you really, really enjoy to watch.
Those are great tips. And even on YouTube, which I know Gen Z absolutely loves YouTube,
Yeah.
hit up YouTube for all the TED Talks. Look at the TED
Yes.
Talks that have millions of viewers. The reason why is because they're obviously very polished. They're obviously very prepared, but
Mhm.
look for the things that all of these speakers do. And there's some common trends that are going to come up over and over again. Just like Ashley mentioned, you're going to see rhetorical questions are going to be coming out. You're going to see them repeating their core idea 5 or 6 or 10 times throughout the talk, right?
Right.
It's the same formula. You just got to figure out what that formula is. And there's really no shortcut to it. I mean, I can tell you what it is, but I think you're better off just going and watching these things over and over again and figuring out in your mind what are those repeating things that are coming up over and over again. And that is ultimately how you're going to be a better speaker, is modeling
Mhm.
yourself after those who have been there and done that.
Exactly.
So I love that idea. Obviously the college students, you have an opportunity to take a public speaking course. So by
Mhm.
all means, sign up for that. I did, and it was fantastic, and I loved every minute of it. It will challenge you, and they will push you, and that's exactly what you want. And also check out like even just local Rotary clubs, for example, in every city in America. Number one, you'll get to meet some really great people that you can network with in your community and maybe help you get a job or an internship. That's number one. Number two, they usually have a speaker over lunch or breakfast or dinner, so you get to see another speaker. And number three, they would love to hear from college students as a speaker to talk about your experiences, your program, where you'd like to go, what you see in the community that can be fixed. And so, think about maybe doing a presentation once you feel comfortable enough. Do a presentation at a Rotary Club. They would love to schedule you. They won't pay you, but they will schedule you in advance, so that way you have some time to work on it and give it a shot. And you never know where something like that would go, because you don't know who's in the audience and what connections you're going to make after doing something like that.
Absolutely. Those are great.
So that's really good. Now, I know you're all into physical fitness as well, that sometimes you're working out. So do you have a workout that helps before a presentation?
This is a good question because before every presentation, I work out.
Mhm.
Um, just because I'm a speaker and a teacher doesn't mean that I don't get nervous. And so I like to focus my energy, my nervous energy, into working out. So I will run, do some type of cardio to kind of release some endorphins. And the funny thing is that when you do cardio, your body is acting the same way your body acts when you're nervous. So when you're nervous, you have an elevated heart rate, your breathing becomes unsteady, and you might sweat. There's a lot of similarities between nerves and cardio, the way your body is reacting. So when you're working out, you're able to focus that energy and really focus on your breathing and get those nerves out, and then you're more calm and settled when you present. I will also say that before my first presentation I ever gave, I recorded my whole speech onto my phone, and on the elliptical, I listened to it the whole time, because even though when you present, it's not going to sound exactly how you prepared it, but at least during that motion and listening to it over and over again, I can remember the main points that I want to make sure that I hit. So there are a couple of workouts that I do
That's a
before.
really smart tip. I have never heard that before. Just listening to yourself while you're working out, on an elliptical or doing some kind of cardio. I like that a lot. And I think you're absolutely right. It will help you to remember those key points. It's not going to be exactly the same as the recording. That's okay. That's totally
Right.
fine. But you will definitely reinforce those key concepts. And I will tell you this, there are certain weeks like Hazing Prevention Week, for example, where I'm literally giving 7 presentations on 7 college campuses in 1 week. And I'm flying from airport to airport to make this happen in between.
That's a
And I
lot.
have to tell you, I'm telling you the truth right here. by presentation 6 or 7 that week, I am on point. I mean, the presentation is as good as it will ever get.
Right.
And so I'm telling you that, what Ashley is telling you is 100% accurate. The more you hear yourself giving that presentation in your head, the better it's going to be. So I 100% agree with it. I'd never heard that, but I like the strategy because I know it works. That's really good. I like that a lot. And, just a final question here. I mean, once you get on stage, and a lot of people work really hard to get there, how do you make a real impact with the audience that's in front of you?
There's 3 things that I really try to do before I get on stage. The first thing is research my audience. Who am I speaking to? Knowing who they are, what demographic they are. Therefore, I know how to tailor my speech for that group. The second thing is my body presence. So showing confidence on stage is really impactful. If I got on stage and was like really crowded and down and didn't have any voice or volume, I think that people wouldn't listen in as much. But for my actual presentation, I really, really rely on emotional appeal. So the rhetorical strategy of pathos. A lot of my speeches are testimonial or based on my own life experience. So tying in that connection with the audience and what I've gone through, I think is most impactful and really makes the audience, relate to where I've been in life and where I'm headed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to be a good storyteller. And I think that's really ultimately what you're getting at there, because your story has hooks in it and you want the audience to be able to say, oh, I know how Ashley feels in this moment because I experienced something similar. And by telling the story, you're putting out hooks for people to get hooked on and really lean in to your story because they know what that felt like.
Yeah.
So I love it. I think that's great advice, and hopefully our listeners will take that and run with it. I think that's phenomenal. Now, we do love good food here at Fraternity Foodie. So you're in Charlotte, and I know there are some spectacular restaurants in Charlotte. You are not looking for good food because you have a city that has great food. So what's your favorite restaurant in Charlotte?
Oh my gosh. It's hard to pick just one. I love a good salad. So Chopped is a good restaurant, but for dinner, Paco's Tacos is a great Mexican restaurant, and I love it. Like there's nothing you could order that could go wrong.
Yeah, I love tacos too, but I'm also trying to keep my abs. So it's like, do I want abs or do I want tacos? It's like I'm balancing the two.
Get tacos.
Get tacos, forget the abs.
Yeah.
I think Paco's Tacos sounds exactly what I was looking for there. Yeah, we have a Chopped here in just outside of Nashville, Tennessee as well. I've been there many times. Great food, great salad. But you know what? Listen, if we're going for dinner, we're probably going to Paco's Tacos.
Oh yes, that's where I'm taking all my family when they come visit.
Yeah, that's where we're headed. We're not going to Chopped.
No, save that for the day you do cardio.
That's right. That's right. We'll do cardio after, and we'll make up for it. It'll be fine. All right. So Ashley, if our listeners want to contact you for coaching, maybe they want to do a workshop on their college campus, or maybe they want you to speak to their students, where's the best place for them to go and get more information?
Yes, definitely. So my website is going to be the best place to contact me for coaching or keynotes or coaching. Did I say that? Coaching. So it would be fiercewomenllc.com. Or if you just want to direct message me on Instagram, I'm always on there at fierce.women.
I love it. I love what you're doing online. I'm so glad that we were able to connect. I've been following you on social media, and I love the content you're putting out. I love the engagement. I love everything about it. So keep doing what you're doing, and you're going to do wonderful things. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Of course. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this talk with Ashley, make sure that you like it. Make sure that you share it with other students on campus. And we hope to see you on another episode of Fraternity Foodie. Thanks so much, and bye for now.